All right, so I just did a video on extroverted intuition, and it was absolutely terrible. So I'm going to start over with welcome to the third video of the cognitive function series. It's extroverted intuition. As always, start with a disclaimer that I have made it my personal mission to get down to the very fundamentals of what comprises each personality type, beginning with their components and building up to the larger framework of what makes a type. Okay, no longer is it going to be about reading a type description online going, that's me or that's not me. Type descriptions are written by people who have perceived or seen or experienced types based on their own subjective experience. So basically, I get sick of watching people waste their time reading these type descriptions and not finding any of the 16 types and matching them. With that being said, don't worry if you haven't seen any of the previous videos. This video is designed to help build you up from a basic understanding of MBTI to the full picture. The other videos are on my channel, so you can always explore the channel. But first and foremost, if you really have questions, get on our Slack channel, which is mbtv-chat.slack.com, I believe. It's also, you can go to our website, Myers-Briggs.com. That's B-R-I-C-K-S. That website does have a link to join that Slack chat. That Slack chat is over, I think there's about 100 members in there right now. Everybody's an MBTI enthusiast. They're all interested in personal development. It's a great place for people who are all sharing ideas. And so if you're really curious about this stuff, as far as I know, that's the only place where a bunch of MBTI people are just talking, other than Personality Cafe, which is not real time. All right, back to the function here. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of what extroverted intuition is, I want you to understand a few things. Myers-Briggs is about preferences, okay? It's not about behavior. It's not about decisions you're going to make due to a certain type. It's not about the way you act. So if you're commenting on my channel about certain types or acting certain ways, or you don't like certain types, that's almost ridiculous. That's completely ridiculous, okay? We use all aspects of the psyche, not just a few cognitive functions, while completely ignoring the others. It's about preferences. So you may see a certain type a certain way because they cognitively perceive and process and make decisions differently than other types, but what you don't see is the fact that these other types are absolutely imperative to the full sustain of society. I think they're all very imperative. So learn to appreciate other types. And what this means, though, what Myers-Briggs is trying to get to here is that a way to think about your preferences is like hardware, which lays a foundation for you to develop your character. Myers-Briggs in no way, shape, or form determines your character, only the underlying hardware which you take in information, not which information you choose to take in, okay? And the ways you actually come to decisions, not the actual decisions you're going to make. So again, shy away from behavior. Okay, that's absolutely imperative. So to understand intuition and extroverted intuition, you have to understand intuition in general. You have to understand what sensing is. I made 2 videos on sensing. So you should have full repertoire of information on sensing, okay? So let's move back to intuition. Intuition in general is a perceiving function that prefers to take the abstract, the conceptual, the intangible data instead of tangible, concrete sensory data. So when someone prefers intuition, they will adopt an attitude on the manner in which they use intuition, okay? This attitude can be toward the world of inner thoughts and subjectivity, or the external world of actions, objects, and objectivity, okay? That's extroversion. So unlike traditional theories on personality typing or introversion and extroversion, Myers-Briggs does not classify people as extroverts or introverts, okay? So when I say you're an introverted intuitive, it doesn't mean that you're an introvert who's an intuitive, okay? It means that you use intuition in a way that it is introverted, okay? It's an adjective. It's defining the noun, okay? It's defining the noun. It's not saying you as a person are introverted. It's designed to define the noun, which is your function, okay? So in Myers-Briggs, we use both extroversion and introversion. I don't think I know a single person who has never gone out and talked to people because they're 100% introverted, okay? They prefer to be introverted. That's different. A preference, which Myers-Briggs is about, okay? So its fundamental philosophy includes the usage of both introversion and extroversion, despite some of the cognitive functions being seen as traditionally more introverted or extroverted than another. For example, FE being very social and TE being very objectifying, okay? So just remember, when I say objects, or if I reference an object, that is an object. It could be a series of facts, an actual physical object, a sound, a taste, or the feeling of something, okay? Although we're able to use both this introverted aspect of intuition and extroverted aspect of intuition, we have a natural preference, a spotlight on one side more so than the other. And the person who prefers introverted intuition generally feel that the subjective perspective has more priority and has more focus than the objective perspective of intuition. And so to think of this in another way, introverted intuition is very, very, very convergent. It's taking one stimulus, it's taking the stimulus from the environment, the entire impetus of the environment from broad, and it's coming to a narrow conclusion. It's coming to a narrow thing. So whereas extroverted intuition comes from a very narrow thing and it expands into, it's an emergent. Okay, so emergent versus convergent. Okay, think about that. So understand those differences between those two types. All right, so biases. Of all the types that I know, the NP types have the most biases. In my personal experience, the most biases. From being ADD to being scatterbrained, to being absent-minded, to being space cadets, to being weird, to being quirky, to being non-conforming, to being goofy, to being random, chaotic, disorganized, distracted, aimless, goalless, lifeless, plenty of other things that people consider of extroverted and intuitive. These are all biased remarks, and they can be true in some instances to any type, but it doesn't encompass what extroverted intuition is, and in many cases, the contrary can be very much more true. So I personally feel that the people with NP types are the most often judged by society, and this is my bias, and for many, many reasons, and they're also potentially diagnosed with variations of ADD, whether it's ADD or ADHD. So the best way to understand extroverted intuition in a nutshell is to understand extroverted sensing. They operate in the same way, okay? They both have this broad area of things to explore. They're both natural explorers. They both want to seek, okay? But they seek in different ways. I prefer to call the NP types, those who use extroverted intuition, the explorers, which may confuse you as extroverted sensing is literally the explorer. Extroverted intuition is the exploration of ideas, ideations, different concepts, the abstract, so areas that you can't measure. This is what creates the idea that NP types are loony or quirky or whatever, or space cadets, because you can't see what they're exploring. You can't see it. It's not tangible. Whereas SE types, people don't see them as quirky or weird or space cadets, because SE types are literally exploring objects and their environment. They can move and feel, so they see what they're doing. They may see them as like ADHD, like can't sit still. But as far as NP types who use any, people see them as ADD or not ADHD necessarily, but ADD, because they don't display that restlessness, but it's actually a mental restlessness. They have an abundant amount of mental energy that other types don't even understand. Other types don't even understand like mental energy. Okay, when it comes to energy, extroverted intuitives have extreme amounts of mental energy, restlessness when it comes to the mental prowess. Okay, an extroverted intuitive is likely to stay up all night, all day, just discussing theoretical concepts for the purpose of just exploration. Whereas NI types love theoretical conversation like NE types, but the only difference is that NI types want to come to consensus, some conclusion. They want to bring things together. And they do it on their own. They don't prefer to discuss it with other people. They may discuss the theory at first to get stimulus for that insight, but they actually trust their own insights more than what that person said. Okay. So this mental energy that NE types have can actually inspire other people around them. Hence why you've seen ENFPs called the champions, ENTPs often called the entrepreneurs. They can get people bought into a vision. So like SE, they both seek stimulation from the outside world, the world outside themselves, not in their head, but NE pursues the opportunities and ideas, okay, the connection between ideas, whereas SE explores the opportunities of things in the moment, novelty, experience. So it's experience versus ideation, okay? It's conceptual versus intangible, or conceptual versus, it's tangible data versus conceptual data, okay? So they both focus broadly, all the possibilities, everything in the scope of, and against what is narrow. Okay, so narrowly they don't focus on that. So it's they look for diversity. They both look for novelty, but novelty in ideas or novelty in the experience. Some people may say, well, I look for both. Yeah, well, it's true. You do look for both. Again, Myers-Briggs doesn't focus on introversion or extroversion. You use all functions. It's just how you use them is going to differ. Again, think about preferences. If it were up to you, with no one and nothing to answer to, and not in your workplace, but where you're most natural, not vacation mode either, where you're most natural, whatever mode that may be, what would you prefer? Okay, novelty experience or the pursuit of endless ideas? Okay, think about this. That's how you really start cracking down whether you're an extroverted sensor or an extroverted intuitive. It's pretty easy to tell the difference, really, but if you're struggling with that, that's an idea. All right. Extroverted sensing may appear very conventional compared to extroverted intuition. Not that extroverted sensing is conventional, but it may appear conventional because it looks at the common trends that are appropriate. SE is very attention to detail. Okay, if you wear this, it's going to give off this vibe. If you wear this, it's going to give off this vibe. Whereas extroverted intuitives are less focused on what vibe it gives off and more focused on what can I do with it? How can I create it? What can I move it into? What can I make? What difference can I make with it? And how can I twist it? How can I make it better? How can I improve it? Less worried about what the actual item does. It may be true that wearing a suit highlights certain features and it makes certain things better. So SE type may go, okay, I'm going to wear a suit to make certain things better. And extroverted intuitives may go, well, I see that it does make those things better, but what if I can make it even better? What can I do to make it even better? I can add this or twist this. I want to play with this idea. So that obviously the extroverted intuitives often go on their own trails because of this. And this is one of the reasons why society judges them so hard. And they have struggled with society because of their focus on this endless pursuit of what could be. The word to summarize extroverted intuitives is what could be. Okay, could is the word, keyword could. All right. And it relates to its relationship with SI, or introverted sensing. Introverted sensing is very, very, very tied into hierarchies of the past. So in order for extroverted intuition to work, which is what could be, it has to understand what has been, okay? It has to understand what has been so it can look at what could be, whereas introverted intuition and extroverted sensing looks at what is, and introverted intuition looks at what will be, okay? So there's a difference there. NI, what will be, this is what will be, this is what is going to happen, because here's what's happening right now. And introverted sensing is what has been, based on that, what could be. What could be. All right? So there's a big difference between the two. So why people get, like in my other video, why people get INFJs and INFPs mixed up, I can't understand why. I just cannot understand why. It just, they are totally different. They extrovert totally different things. Ugh. Ugh. All right. So extroverted intuitives can be seen as flighty, oblivious, very absent-minded. And whereas extroverted sensors obviously aren't seen like that because extroverted sensors are about here in the moment, exploring the moment, whereas extroverted intuitives may go on a tangent with ideas and a bunny trail with ideas. So that can make them kind of oblivious to what's going on right now because their focus is not here and now. Their focus is on that pursuit of ideas that are stemmed from here and now. Okay, so enthusiasm about ideas versus enthusiasm about experience. Think about that way. All right. I think the most distinguishable characteristic is the TransContextual Thinking, which is a term coined by Dr. Dario Nardi, I believe, who is a researcher and professor, and that does this. I think his website is keystocognition.com, if I'm not mistaken. And he noticed that this transcontextual thinking is triggered by sensory information and processes information in regions of the brain that are seemingly unrelated, and where that information may not be applicable for any other type. So to think about this in a weird way, that NE is probably the hardest function to naturally just tap into. And this is just my subjective bias here. It may be a very hard function if you're not an NE preference. It may be hard for you to get and become an NE preference or try to use that NE. I'm sorry, you'll never become an NE preference, but you can try to use that NE to do whatever you need it to do. Okay. So transcontextual thinking is taking a concept or an idea or something that goes into this category in the brain, but able to take that idea and throw it into another category of the brain where it's not supposed to go. And somehow it creates a connection between those two things. And that's what makes transcontextual thinking a very unique quality of extroverted intuitives. For an example, I could say that, I think Dr. Dario Nardi created this example. I could say that, someone who hears the words dog or cat may think of a beloved childhood pet. Automatically an image of a cat or a dog that you had in the past come up. Ironically, well, not ironically, but weird for me is when I think of dog or cat, I actually think of a dog or cat I don't have or never had but will have. I don't know. That's weird, right? So even though I have a dog right over there, it's kind of weird. So, or some memory, they may think of some memory that they've had with these animals, whereas the extroverted intuitive may imagine a story about how a new language will be spoken in verbal hieroglyphics. What? Verbal hieroglyphics? What is that? Right? But somehow they may think that is a possibility, that it could actually happen. How could you speak in verbal hieroglyphics? I don't know. When I actually wrote that, I don't even know what I was talking about. But the point is, it's not senseless. It has an idea. If I think about it, I actually thought about it. I was actually connected. Somehow a dog or cat reminded me of that at that point when I was trying to think of what can be outside the box, but I've lost it. Okay, it's not my natural preference. It's not in my consciousness at this time. Whereas in any user, I might say that, and I might say those two separate things, and they've drawn a connection between the two immediately. They may have known what train of thought I was on. I can't even remember what train of thought I was on when I said that. That's my point. I don't know. So it's not active in my consciousness. Okay, so. And he is looking for these constant connections between everything, seeking everything in the realm of theoretical and interconnectedness. Okay, this makes these extroverted intuitives often open to gray areas and keeping things in gray areas. What could be? Well, it could be this. But because of that, they also can be very skeptical. Whereas introverted intuitive types want to have a consensus and will typically come to a conclusion, and E types may run two simultaneously contradictory ideas and somehow make them both work. Okay, so for example, it may be possible for an extroverted intuitive to both believe in evolution and both believe in, Christianity and believe in Buddhism, all at the same time. Whereas other types may judge them for this and say that can't be right because this says this and this says this. But they have their own way of reasoning. They're not all crazy. I swear to you, they're not. They get frustrated with these other people who have these perceptions or judgments on their ability to be able to use this creativeness and this transcontextual thinking because others don't understand it naturally. And these other people don't understand the inner workings of extroverted intuition, where extroverted intuitives naturally can do that. Other types don't understand it. And this often way of creative thinking leads to them so far outside the realm of what is normal that other types may see them as very chaotic and very not put together or random or not true to belief or religion or whatever doctrine that they're trying to be in. And NP types prefer to leave possibilities open. They prefer to not close down and can come to a conclusion. They prefer to run multiple possibilities. That's what their focus is, especially ENPs. With their dominant function being extroverted intuition, that's what they're focused on. They do not want to come to a consensus on one idea. They want to simultaneously explore and explore and explore the world of ideas. So the more that you're trying to confine them and tell them that they're wrong or right, the more that they're going to get frustrated with your inability to understand them. And the truth is, who's wrong is you. You're wrong in the sense that you're not working with them to understand them and understand their perspective. No longer is it about the topic, which is whatever you may be discussing at that time, but you're actually incorrect in not being able to address their perspective. Okay, so that's a big thing about extroverted intuitives that I think people need to understand. So in addition to having the ability of this transcontextual thinking, taking one thing in context and putting it in a seemingly non-fitting context, extroverted intuition has the innate ability to rapidly brainstorm out loud a plethora of ideas from one stimulus or multiple stimuli. It has the amazing ability to pick up meanings and interconnections between seemingly unrelated concepts and combine them into a future possibility. So it can have these many, many different future possibilities of what could be based on one little event, one little thing. Okay, so it's actually really, really unique in this way. Their interest is new. So when you think of the word new, think of NE. They're looking at new things, okay? New possible future developments. And because of this, they're often aware of spotting new trends way before even others are mildly aware of these trends. Okay, this is a really cool technique that any users have is they take a stimulus from an event and they can look at another event and go, wow, here's what's happening. Oh man, this is a really cool trend. I see this, what's going on. This makes them brilliant entrepreneurs, okay? They struggle with the TE. Both ENPs struggle with the TE aspect of it. NPs in general struggle with TE, except the NFPs, it's their tertiary function. So they struggle with organizing their future developments, but we'll talk about that in a minute, how they can develop that or focus on that. So moving on, they want to circulate ideas aloud with other people. They want to get them out. They want to make new connections and have others stimulate their creativity. Whereas users of the opposite intuition preference, introverted intuition, tend to want to come up with their own insights on their own and just use the environment to feed their subconscious mind. They don't really care about getting ideas right now. It's about give me everything you have, and I'll let my subconscious mind do the work. Okay, so it's why NI users are seen consuming massive amounts of information and resources, and then sleeping on it, and then having an idea another day. Whereas an NE user may read one line and go, boom, here's a million possibilities. Oh my God, they're everywhere. All right. So for this reason, NE's the reason of them wanting to explore and talk their ideas aloud and look for new ideas in the moment. They typically are more caught up to trend of like the new thinkers or the new philosophers and new day and age, who's doing what, how they're doing it, not in the sense of the details like SE users would, but more in the sense of like what they're contributing and how they're contributing and what ideas they're sparking. Okay, and this rapid brainstorming ability that the NE users have can make them very sporadic and haphazardly bounce from one idea to the next. So people can look at them like random. Okay, this is where this randomness comes in, is this whole NFP randomness, people typically will call it. Whereas NTPs typically can organize their thoughts a little more effectively than NFPs. Both types can be seemingly random, which is not the case. They're actually following a bunny trail that's legitimate, though it has its challenges. Like all types, it does have its challenges. All right. So another characteristic of extroverted intuition that you need to consider is their open-mindedness. This is often to be admired, and a signature strength of extroverted intuition is this open-mindedness. I talked about their skepticism, which, you know, they naturally, because they consider all possibilities, they're naturally not going to accept an idea, and they're naturally not going to reject an idea. Okay, so they can be very skeptical because they're not accepting it immediately. They're not, often people with NP types are assumed to be not very smart. And I don't know why that is, in a sense of why society has done that. But I can tell you, looking at them, they're actually highly intelligent people. In fact, I think they use regions of their brain that other types may never be able to achieve. And this is quite a compliment coming from someone who prizes intelligence and competence. I would say that NP types can be very stimulating in that regard. You just have to, when you talk to one as a non-NP type, you have to really open your mind and think about and let them talk and try and only direct them if they feel they need to be directed. Okay, don't try to cut them off. Don't try to cut off their creativity. Don't judge their creativity. Back to the point is they have this open-mindedness. And this open-mindedness, it creates problems for NP types, and it can cause difficulty for them to reach conclusions or follow through because they may be stuck in looking at all the possibilities of what could be. And this is why NP types often have difficulty coming to conclusions naturally. All right, and this is also because their lack of touch with TE, whether it's an NFP type or whether it's a NTP type, it often has this lack of external organization, which the world wants to see in people. So society has objectified that these NP types, that conclusions are meant to be admired. So if you're not making them, then you're not doing the right thing in life. And but what they don't realize is having these extra possibilities and seeing connections that no one else does can also be seen as an amazingly good thing. All right, seeing connections way before they even happen. And it is astonishing to read these historical figures of the NP types in the past who have come up with these connections and realizing, how did these people come up with this stuff? However, NP types typically are challenged, especially dominant ENP types are very challenged without balancing their function, their judging function. And this is because their natural knack for exploring ideas is so much enjoyment and fun that sometimes they may actually realize that they never developed their judgment on it. And it can create quite a crisis in the NP user's life, or the NP person's life, because they may naturally believe that conclusions can't be made without this emergence idea that I don't want to draw a conclusion because I have to wait for things to come to fruition before the conclusion is actually valid. So it's kind of a bottom-up approach. And they can often get frustrated with people who do form quick conclusions. And this is why ENTPs and ENFPs clash with ENTJs quite a bit, and ESTJs quite a bit, because they're very conclusive on many things. So this quick conclusion thing can frustrate any users as it dampens their open-mindedness and creativity. And any user may be going off this creative trail, and a TJ user of any type may go, nope, Nope, that's not right. Sorry. Nope, that's a dumb trail. Stop. Don't even go there. And so being a natural explorer of ideas, they may feel that these decisions that these TJ users will often make on them are very limiting. And it's not because they're afraid. We often see NP users as afraid of making the wrong choice, especially from the NFP group, afraid to make the wrong choice. And often they do hope that decisions could be made for them. And it's not because they don't want somebody. It's not because they don't want somebody to make the decision for them in the sense of that because they're afraid or they're scared, but more the fact that they want somebody to make the decision for them because they feel that they're going to be ruling out possibilities that they've considered, and they don't want to not put a emphasis on the importance of these possibilities to themselves. Okay, so, or these possibilities may have been categorized by their judging function. Therefore, they may find themselves hoping that decisions are made for them by fate, by other people. Sometimes they'll put themselves in the position where decisions are made for them. Think of this. I think Dr. Drenth, I think that's his name, he came up with this analogy. He said somebody who is in a relationship they want to get out of, an NP type, may actually subconsciously make the relationship bad so they can get out of it, so they don't make the decision in the relationship. Okay, they're trying to wait for the right circumstance when the right circumstance is never going to come. And yet they're waiting for the possibility, or they're holding on to the possibility that it may become good. It may turn around. Okay, not that this is bad or good, but it's an example of why NPs, it's an example of how NPs naturally do not want to come to this hardcore conclusion as fast as, say, other types. So again, society really judges them for them. So this is why I have a special place in my heart for NP types, even though sometimes they irritate me, I'm not gonna lie. Not all of them, some of them. But I do value them because I understand what they're thinking and going through, although sometimes it really does get to me, and I'll tell you why here in a second. But let me move on to this point real quick. Well, actually, I'll tell you right now because I'm going to lose it, actually. So here's why. The reason is because NP types are looking for a bunch of information. They want more and more information to stimulate more and more possibilities. So what they're doing is when they come to you for advice, they want all the advice you can give them, whether the advice is contrary to the advice you gave 5 seconds ago or 10 seconds ago, because they want as many possibilities as possible. So all these possibilities are coming up. What they're doing is they're following their natural function and expanding. They're not getting anywhere near a conclusion. They're not moving toward a consensus. They're actually moving away from a consensus by adding more possibilities of what they could do. So they're talking to 15, 20, 30, 50, 90 people about what they should do in a situation. And they're getting all these possibilities, and they actually have now more possibilities to consider. It doesn't help them. Well, at least in my mind. And this is where my frustration goes. With their mind, they may actually think it is helping them, and they may be right. But from my perspective, this is why it frustrates me as a TJ. Okay, so just understand that is my bias. That has nothing to do with any types as a whole, but just my personal perspective of why I feel frustrated with them at times. So let's move on here. I will say this about any types, though. In addition to the frustration, oftentimes I find myself envious of them because they're so able to wear intuition outside. They're so able to just spit intuitive inside out through art, music, creativity, wittiness, humor, ideas. It's just boom, 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 boom. Whereas me, it's like, how do I get my idea out? How do I get something out? They're able to do it. For example, the INFP is notorious for being a creative, being an extreme creative. They have this deep world of internal deep passions, and they take these deep passions and they funnel them through a creative means they feel best represents who they are. Okay, and it's a creative means, and it's a totally new twist. So it's like an amazing piece of art or an amazing piece of music or whatever their focus is. Maybe it's just humor. Regardless of what it is, it comes out as so authentic and so pure. Like, wow, that's really who you are. That's awesome. And they can do this naturally. Where in I types, like ourselves, like INTJs and ENTJs, we struggle with being able to exude things outside of ourselves and just wear it on our sleeve. Like, hey, here's what's up. Here's a new idea. Here's how I feel. Because I feel like me personally, I can't make something that represents me. It doesn't represent me no matter what I make. I can't do it. Whereas in E types, you're like, yeah, that's me. I'm like, wow, okay, you got me beat. All right, so anyway, so the NE types can be envied by NI types in that way, as long as NI types can appreciate the rapid brainstorming out loud and the lack of coherency, well, observable coherency between different contexts and different ideas. Okay, a holistic sense. In a holistic sense, think of it this way: NI types think everything is interconnected. NI types prefer to have their barriers between certain things. This thing does not apply to this thing. You do not link these two things. Okay, it would be like a Christian saying that you don't put evolution with Christianity. They don't mix. A lot of NI types will say that. Whereas me, I'm an NI type. I don't quite believe that could be true or not true yet, and I'll explain that in years to come. But point is, NI types are likely to put barriers between different ideas or concepts and be a little more holistic. Okay, and so NI types feel like that. What applies to the body doesn't apply to the mind, kind of thing. And NE types may see this as very limiting. Okay, so they see this as they're lacking creativity. Last thing I want to say about NE in the sense of characteristics is that NE is very go with the flow, and it lets things emerge. So as they're writing or doing anything, it kind of just pours out. It kind of just, let's follow the trail. Let's see where it takes us. They're explorers. Whereas NI is like, I have an idea, now I just need to transcribe that idea down on paper. Okay, so I just need to get it down exactly how it is there. And that's where why NI types lean toward the technical aspect, and NE types, they lean toward the creative aspect, because NI types can't express. That's where they struggle, is that expression of who they are outward. And this is true for all NI types. They cannot, they get an idea and they write it down, but they're having a difficult time matching it because they're limited by this creative interconnectedness. They can't see how music connects to bedding on a couch. They can't quite draw a connection to there. Okay, so NI types have naturally more of a difficult time focusing on things that are the creative arts and more on the scientific arts. The NTJs are focused on the scientifics and not the arts. Okay. Now NTJs learn to appreciate the arts, but they typically are not artists. Not always the case, but typically, because they have a hard time tapping into that true self-expression. They don't feel like it represents them enough. Technical is easy. You know, if it's here, then it's here. I can copy what's in my head down on paper about an idea, but can I copy who I am down on paper? No, I struggle with that. Whereas in NE type, I go, oh, okay, yeah, that's me. Let me show you how I can represent me with this amazing piece of ice sculpture. So it can be quite an admiration from an NI user to an NE user who can do that. Trust me, I have a couple INFPs I'm just astonished by doing stuff like that. And it just pours out like in the moment, like, oh yeah, here's a song I made up. Or yeah, here's the thing I did. I'm like, how do you do that? So let's talk about the NP types real quick, just a brief brush through them. I'm going to make type videos individually in the future, but let's just talk about NE types in general. You've got the ENTP, and the ENTP is dominant extroverted intuition followed by introverted thinking, and that introverted thinking is a tool for them to further explore their ideas. Okay, so they use categorization of ideas and analysis to further explore ideas. Okay, and so that categorization of how the world is and blah, 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 whatever they're categorizing will actually explore the ideas that they're willing to pursue. Number one priority is pursuing new ideas for ENTP. Hence why they're good in entrepreneurship, building businesses. They're good at law, because they're able to look at different concepts and different ideas and explore those into their categories and then categorize that. And if that idea doesn't match it, then they're able to see a flaw in your logic pretty quick. Okay. The INTP, it's reverse. The INTP's primary focus is to get a full logical understanding of the systematics of the universe, essentially, how everything comes to a fine logical framework, how mathematics is a typical thing for INTPs because it tends to structure the very structure of the universe. And therefore, everything can slowly fit into this one universal truth. And so they take their extroverted intuition, the NE, and they take an idea or a concept and break it down into its components, and then take the components of that and make sure they cross-reference with the INTP's database. All this happens pretty rapidly in the subconscious mind, by the way. And they take it and they process it into its database and figure out where this little item fits. And then they're ruling these things out. Okay, this fits here, boom, and they're fractioning these ideas. So they're taking a big component and breaking it down and looking at those ideas, and then they're reapplying it to their system of logic. So they have a very, very sophisticated, thought-out system of logic that is explored through extroverted intuition. Both these types extrovert the same. They both extrovert intuition. So when you look at somebody, that's what they're extroverting. So you're going to see the exploration of ideas. You're going to see this typical quirkiness or this ADHD personality, not always, but quirkiness, ADD, kind of space cadet maybe, but pursuit of ideas. Look for the novelty. Look for what they're chasing. What do they want out of this conversation? Look for that, the pursuit of ideas. Okay, looking for endless possibilities, what it could be. All right, see what they're looking for when you're looking for these two types. The ENFP and INFP, same kind of process. The ENFP is focused with extroverted intuition. That's their primary goal, pursuit of ideas. They use their system of values and their systems and relationships with people to further explore those possibilities. Okay, it's the same concept. INFP, internal system of values. That's their primary focus. What's front and center of their psyche. This is what about me I understand. Extroverted intuition is a way to further explore those ideas and a way to exude those ideas or those deep value systems. So I can use extroverted intuition as a way to take a logical, not a logical framework, but a value-based framework. This is how I feel about this. Break it down into its different components, like logically speaking, what makes that value true, what makes it false value, kind of thing. Even though you're using a logic framework, you'll find out that FI and TE are very, very related somewhere in the future. You'll take that idea or that value framework and you'll look at that and you'll analyze it in the sense of values. Is this right or is this wrong? And INFPs do that. Does that connect with who I am? Does it not? You know, this idea of me making millions of dollars, is that who I am? They're comparing that. Then they're looking at, here's what it could result. It would result in a lifestyle like maybe like this, maybe like this, maybe like this. Does any of that fit me? So they use it as a way to explore their values further. So let's look at SI. We already talked about SI's relationship with NE. So let's look more at what extroverted intuition looks like in tertiary types or inferior types. In tertiary types, it manifests as a series of creative solutions that may go into solving a given problem or moving them toward a goal. Okay, so a series of solutions. So it's popping up tertiary. It's not like the primary focus, but it's helping. So ESTJ, creative solutions, think about this. They're naturally SI users. So they want to be resourceful. They conservatory. If you don't know about SI, there's a video about it on my channel. You can watch it. But as far as SI goes, they want to conserve. So NE may go, okay, how do I use this resource again without having to go get a new one? How can I conserve this resource? And they'll come up with a creative way to use that. Okay. So think of it this way. ESTJ may say to themselves, I will consider the possibilities which will help me best accomplish the goal that I have. Okay. Whereas inferior extroverted intuition, it manifests more as a way to try, as a reluctance almost, like I don't want to do this. Maybe has an anxiety over the unknown, what could be. So maybe ISTJs or ISFJs, they struggle with this reluctance and go, wow, okay, I'm a little bit anxious about this. I don't want to go into the unknown. I'm comfortable with my routine. And as it matures, these users get more comfortable in these uncertainties, but at first that's what it appears like. Okay, so the monologue kind of that an inferior NE person would have is it's probably best to stick with what works. There's no sense in getting lost in what we've done, no sense in getting lost in what we will do, no sense in getting lost in these potential possibilities when we know what works. Okay, we know that NE is not a complete function by itself. We know that it appears as. Let me give you some miscues. Let me pull this up real quick. I want to give this information. I didn't do this in my other two videos, but this is an idea I had earlier this morning, and I do want to share this with you. Give me just a second. Okay, so as soon as I get this up, hang on one second. And if you got a chance, check out our Slack channel. Seriously, it's really worth it. So you might lose a little bit of productivity because there's so much to learn on there from other types, but just keep in mind that, you know, make sure you be regulatory the time you spend on it. Okay, so extroverted intuitive types, a miscue for them, they may appear distracted, restless, impulsive, hasty, noisy, unrealistic in expectations. And some miscues for ENTPs that people think their active questioning may be viewed as hastiness and unrealistic expectations. Honesty may be seen as bluntness or tactlessness. And then rapid idea generation may seem like distractibility. Whereas for a ENFP, you know what? Let me just do this. You're going to get this. This is going to work better, I think, if it'll work. Okay. Let's see. Hold on one second. All right, so you should be seeing my screen here. So here's how extroverted intuitive types may appear to others. And you can see the NTP, active questioning, may be viewed as hastiness. So you can read through this. I'm not going to have to read through this all. And I'm just going to leave this up for a little bit. As you can see here, the INTP may be seen as detachment, may be seen as uncaring. A questioning may appear challenging or disrespectful. But you got to remember, these are extroverted intuitive types. This is what they're extroverting. This is what people are seeing. This is what people are going through. This is what this is the challenge that they're having. Okay. So keep in mind that these 4 types are all extroverting the same function, so they may look similar. Okay. Now, when you start to get to know them, you can see how they make decisions, but they're all extroverting sort of the same way. Whereas these other types, you can see like what these other types look like, which we'll get into another time. So, all right. Whoa. All right, so now back to me. All right, so hopefully that gives you guys an idea of how that works. And lastly, I do want to cover this one thing though, and then we'll talk about a little bit of that development. And then if you have questions, like I said, you can comment here. The any-SI function pair entails a temporal element with SI attuning to the past and any to future possibilities. And we could argue it less natural, less healthy for EMPs to devote their time and energy to exploring the past. Many are inspired by ISJs and develop strong interest in history. And so this is very common. You'll find that NPs typically will, in their latter years, will start leaning toward studying history. And doing so can feel meaningful to EMPs and ISJs alike, engendering a sense of union between their beliefs and past actualities. This seems particularly common among those interested in religion or politics who seek to root or reinforce their beliefs in the concrete past. So as they get older, they typically will have these different viewpoints. Okay, last thing in this video. Glad I've redone this video because the other video was absolutely terrible. Last thing is development of any. Okay, so think about it this way. Any looks at possibilities. So take a second and try to link 2 seemingly unrelated ideas. Try to find a commonality between them. That's number 1. Try to find a connection between seemingly unrelated ideas. What relates that to this? Okay, what relates grass to the sun? Try to relate or interconnect concepts like that, okay? Hopefully I can get a dominant extroverted intuitive on this channel and get an interview going. And I can see how they actually, and talk to them about how they use their extroverted intuition so you can further see what they do. For now, you can check out some other extroverted intuitives on YouTube to see this. Another way to develop it is you can take an object and figure out what you could do with it. You know, what are the million things that you could do with that object? What context could you apply it? I could take an apple, and how many ways can I use an apple? What can I do with it? And if you give consciousness to this, you'll start developing a little bit of a quicker notion. Now, it's never going to be natural to you. Types don't change, as according to MBTI theory. Now, many of you may think and believe otherwise, but until you do research, I'm not going to buy it. So with that being said, I think if you have questions, feel free to comment. I'm now removing the other video, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.